Hey everyone, welcome to another Melderon Reacts. This is the second one. Really enjoying doing these. I recorded this actually right after the one I did about the Asmongold video with the RuneScape. RuneScape doesn't need nostalgia, and in that sense, neither does Classic WoW, in my opinion. So this one is one that was actually in my recommended as I was reacting to Asmongold's video. And it's called The Greatest Adventure in World of Warcraft. And the thumbnail got me, I have to say. And this is by a YouTuber named Jedi Warlock. And I know nothing about the channel nor the video, but the thumbnail got me. And it's obviously about Classic WoW. So let's just go into this purely without any background information. And let's go. Let's react to it.
It doesn't take long for newcomers to the world of Azeroth to realize its impact on gaming. From exploring the massive world, to discovering countless quests and enemies, to uncovering the deeper story of these lands, the experience of playing Classic WoW is like none other, and I'm sure many...
You guys probably don't know how much work it is to do stuff like this, so the B-roll he's doing, and that angle he got in the Deadmines looking down at the first boss, he's probably using his own private server, and just to record the footage, and it's a lot of work, and I just want to commend people who do this type of thing, because he's got to sit there, go to that dungeon, use like a fly command, sit up there and do like a pan, right? And he's got to do that for every single shot that he's doing here. So it's not a trivial amount of work. And even if it's done by an editor, it's still someone's doing this.
Many of you agree. The game is widely considered a masterpiece, and almost 20 years later, the original classic version is still going strong. Today, though, I want to explore one specific region of the map that encompasses that classic feel, with spectacular questing and a story that draws you into this fantasy realm. The human level 1 to 30 starting experience. 4 zones, 4 very different types of atmosphere and conflict, each building toward a satisfying conclusion that sees players uncovering plots and eventually reaching level 30, ready to move on to more exotic lands.
There's a reason why I stopped doing videos like this is because of how much work they are. But so I want to say, just as a Horde player, of course I've done that, network of quests from Elwynn, Redridge, Westfall, and Duskwood. Like, I've done all these quests before. But I will say it's a very nice user experience, and it's a great... there's no wonder why that's what they showcased. That area was done first. It had the most love and work put into it, that starting area. But I will say they are very disjunct, and I don't like the step and fetch nature of those quests. I feel like the Horde questing, and perhaps even the Dwarf and Night Elf ones, which I have very little experience with, I've probably only done them once or twice. It may not be as well thought out and beautiful and well written, but it's so much more efficient in my opinion.
This video is an overview and review of these areas, but I've also included quite a few small details and secrets that I personally think enhance the gameplay and make for an awesome intro experience. This part of the game is my absolute favorite, and this video does include my own opinions, but maybe by the end of it, you'll see what makes these 4 zones, collectively, the greatest adventure in WoW history.
Alright, let's see it. It's a bold claim.
As soon as you enter the world, before you even start playing really, you're greeted with the iconic intro cinematic for the humans. I won't play the whole thing here, but...
Again, before he plays the music, I just want to commend Jedi Warlock. You're doing a great job. You make a cinematic quality. It's not easy to do. So I just commend you on the quality of your video.
But I think the last few sentences are especially important for the story and the motivations of your character.
Backed by their stalwart allies, the armies of Stormwind have been called away to fight the savage horde on distant battlefields. With the armies gone, the defense of Stormwind now falls to its proud citizens. You must defend the kingdom against the foul mongrels that encroach upon it, and hunt down the subversive traitors who seek to destroy it from within. Now is the time for heroes. Now humanity's greatest chapter can be told.
Now, what makes this good, and this goes into my last reaction, is that you don't need to know anything about the World of Warcraft lore at all to enjoy this opening cinematic and feel like you have, a gumption to do something about this, right? Not a lot of games do a good job of doing a very simple exposition of what's going on in the world. I came into World of Warcraft only playing Warcraft 3 a little bit. I'm not a real-time strategy guy, right? So I didn't know the lore that well, right? But stuff like this really hooks you. And it's simply done. There's no crazy cinematic. It's just literally a fly command. Like a GM just took a fly command and is flying through like the zone, right? It's like, it's just a very simple way of exposition, but it's very, very good. And it doesn't give you too much information to scare you. It's just enough information.
And this right here is such a crucial point to start off with. As we'll see going forward into the human lands, there are threats both external off with.
Have you guys ever wondered
And
what these are? These, like, does anyone know who that's supposed to be? I mean, it's obviously a face, right? It's not just pareidoily, right? This is an actual face. I don't know, it's just something, there's interesting little things in the graphics that I've never really noticed what they are.
This right here is such a crucial point to start off with. As we'll see going forward into the human lands, there are threats both external and internal that play huge roles in the story all the way up to level 30 and beyond, and it's your responsibility to seek out and deal with them. From your very first steps within Northshire Valley, you start to uncover how the peace of Elwynn Forest is on the verge of collapse. Thugs belonging to the Defias Brotherhood have taken over the local vineyard, and small rat creatures known as kobolds have claimed ownership of the mine. Even in these first few levels, Northshire does a great job of blending the realistic and supernatural, having you begin by fighting renegade humans, timberwolves, and
Am I losing my mind? Do those wolves always have like a poison effect on them?
these first few levels, Northshire does a great job.
You guys, wait, am I losing my mind? Is that real? I don't think I've ever seen that before. Okay.
Of blending the realistic and supernatural, having you begin by fighting renegade humans, timberwolves, and the odd kobolds in the same area. Cleaning up the issues here, the Marshal of Northshire sends you south to Goldshire, the trading and questing center of the zone, where many more tasks begin. On your way south to the Fargo Deep Mine, I really like how the game offers you the chance to explore smaller quest areas like the McClure Vineyards that you're not explicitly led to. The map in WoW gradually reveals itself to you as you discover pieces of it in real time, giving you a minor incentive to fill out the map as you travel. Stopping by here at level 5 or 6 really helps in gaining experience, as there...
Is anyone else like me and like you have to like explore all the parts of a zone before you leave it? It's like a weird anal thing I have.
There are several quests to be found here and at the nearby Stonefield Farm. These lead you to other areas that you otherwise wouldn't have much reason to visit, such as the Murloc-infested Crystal Lake, an especially challenging spot if you grow overconfident wading into the water. After Central Elwynn, the penultimate area of the zone is the East Vale Logging Camp, which further highlights the problems facing the kingdom, including the Defias and the Murlocs. On your way out of the zone, the final issue to contend with are the Riverpaw Gnolls, a tribe of beastmen that have taken over the southwest. By picking up a bounty on the message board at Westburt Garrison, you now have a reason to track the menacing Hogger, leader of the Gnolls here, and the
many HC runs have ended here.
First elite creature you've seen up to this point. Even for players past level 10, this can be a tough fight, and if you're too reckless, this may be your first lesson in needing to collaborate with other players to succeed.
Yeah, this is this is an excellent way of doing that. And of course, there's like every starting run has a quest like this where you usually have to group up with someone. I mean, the Barrow Den could be an example of that. In the Night Elf starting zone, what's that little goblin in Dorotar? Fizzle Darkclaw, or whatever his name is, right? Or even the Voodoo Zalazane's skull, right? There's all these little places where you can go and do this, which I think is great. Forcing players to interact, not forcing, but strongly advising it, is just such a good thing, a good way of fostering interactions and friendships in an MMO. It's just such a great design.
If you're thorough or lucky enough, you may also find the Gold Pickup Schedule, a quest item from the Gnolls that reveals the true scheme within Elwynn. Both the kobolds and gnolls are working under the Defias to redirect mining routes to Westfall. Finding and eliminating Morgan the Collector at the Brackwell Pumpkin Patch is essentially the end of the first chapter of this story, with only a few hints as to what may come next. Marshal Dugan exclaims, "You found him? Well done. He won't be collecting from the Elwynn mines again."
Oh god, this reminds me of when I did that troll voice in Classic Wall Storytelling. This is a much cleaner way of doing it. This is very good, by the way. I love the fade out and the quote. It's great.
And this ring you found is interesting. It's a membership ring for the old stonemasons guild in Stormwind. Why would a Lowly thief have an artisan guild ring? And why are the Defias thieves collecting money from our mines? Moreover, the gold pickup schedule includes a nod of encouragement from the Defias higher-up who wrote the letter. "Remember, my brothers, we were once proud craftsmen. We'll perform our current duties with the same precision we used in our past trade." Signed, EVC.
Who's EVC, guys?
With this story fresh in your mind, you may be ready to take on Westfall, but there are still a few matters to attend to. By this point, you've probably reached level 10, and regardless of the class you're playing, a visit to the capital is in order to begin a special class quest. As a side note, Stormwind City is perhaps the most organized of all the capitals, and it's a great introductory experience to all the goods, services.
I disagree with that completely. I think I'm a Thunderbluff enjoyer, even though I don't think it's in a great position as far as it's not the most beautiful place. I think Stormwind probably is the nicest looking, like just from a classic fantasy standpoint. But efficiency wise, I think Thunderbluff is super efficient. Super efficient.
And quests that can be found here. After finding your class trainer, you'll head back out into the forest to a destination unique to your class. Beforehand or during this time, you might be able to clear up some of the last missing areas on your map, such as the idyllic Mirror Lake, Ridgepoint Tower, or the island on Stonecairn Lake, a memorial to fallen defenders of Stormwind.
Such a cool little area.
I couldn't leave out two of the most isolated spots that adventurous players might just stumble across. Above Mirror Lake, a hidden path leads up to Thunder Falls, another of the Defias gang's newest holdings. There are no quests specific to this spot, but it can be quite peaceful once the enemies are dealt with. In the northeast, traveling past Stonecairn Lake reveals another large encampment of gnolls and a ruined cottage, revealing their encroachment was not entirely resolved with the defeat of Hogger. One final detail worth mentioning are the ruined war machines that can be found throughout Elwynn, remnants of wars long past that are now overgrown with the passage of time. Elwynn Forest is by itself one of the greatest zones ever created. The quests flow nicely but aren't boringly linear.
Yeah, Elwynn's really nicely done. Again, I'm a horde-centric player, so it's always going to be a little weird for me to play in those zones. It's not going to feel comfortable, but that's a good thing sometimes. And I think Elwynn is the perfect zone to get players started in World of Warcraft. I think Durotar and Molor's pretty good, but Durotar, especially Night Elf, Teldrassil, aren't great introductions to the game. Undead Starting Zone, yes, it's very good, and I think it's a very good quest hub, but I think it's a little too dreary for most players to get into a game like this.
The environment is fitting for a hero just starting out on their journey, the music is iconic, and the threats established here seamlessly carry over into the next zone. Let's introduce another zone into this puzzle. Chapter 2 in our journey on Azeroth. Across the river from Westbrook Garrison, the woods of Elwynn fade away into the expanse of golden plains called Westfall. Once the breadbasket of human lands, but now the domain of the Defias. The first people you meet here are the Furlbrows, farmers who are fed up with the bandits and are leaving for Stormwind.
Like
if you were, again, rather lucky back in Elwynn, you might have picked up Furlbrow's deed from one of the bandits, and returning it to the couple might just allow them to return one day and restart their lives. There's this dichotomy between abandonment and resilience that is really apparent in this zone, and compared to Elwynn, where civilization appears more secure, Westfall is a land in turmoil.
Westfall always felt like a little bit of a Wild West vibe, almost like pioneer humans are trying to settle it. It's not as green and lush as Elwynn. Therefore, the people are a little bit more tough. Kind of like a Midwest kind of feel. And I think Westfall is a little bit. Westfall can get boring for me, but I do think it's a very iconic zone, and I think that there's a lot of exploration attached to it, and it's much more difficult than Elwynn as far as mob pulls. Especially the Defias Pillagers obviously are in Westfall, so it's a big step up in difficulty for new players. And I'm looking at this from a lens of 2004 guys, right? Obviously, it's kind of a joke now, but in hardcore, how many people died at Defias Pillagers, right? A lot. And I think it's a stark change. It might not look like a stark change in environment from Elwynn, but it is, right? It's a completely different color palette. It's much more sparse in terms of trees. It looks harsh, right? And I think that's something that the developers did really, really well.
The good folk forced to leave, and chaos presiding ever since. The one saving grace is Sentinel Hill, an outpost of Stormwind now maintained by the People's Militia, a group of ragtag civilians led by the single paladin, Gryan Stoutmantle, who have banded together for safety and are the closest thing to a governing body in the zone. All around, farms have burned, and crops have been pillaged, but it is here, from this tower, where the militia seeks to strike back against the Defias and their allies. Starting off in a similar thread to Elwynn Forest, quest givers send you to liberate places of importance, including the Jangalode Mine, several of the farmsteads, and the outskirts of the town of Moonbrook.
That place can be really scary if you're playing hardcore like this area right here. And I have just fond memories of doing the Deadmines back in Classic. And, sorry, I'm talking vanilla now. So getting here in vanilla was super cool. We used to just come here, even past level of Deadmines, and just kind of like interact with Alliance. Sometimes flag ourselves, just have a good time here. But also fond memories of doing hardcore where you're jumping off the Zeppelin at low level, right? At like level 20. And swimming through Stranglethorn and getting here and just being like, it kind of felt like SEAL Team 6, you know what I mean? You're jumping off the Zeppelin and you're swimming to this area over here, over in this area over here, and you're coming up the hill. It's just a really fun memories there.
Once the bustling heart of Westfall, now little more than a ghost town. Gnolls, Murlocs, and Kobolds are continuing threats as well, providing a good sense of continuity between the two zones. But there are also new foes, including the Mechanical Harvesters, strange, scarecrow-like mobs controlled by the Defias. While you're exploring and dealing with all of these threats, Westfall is also a great example of how the game trains your in-game behavior outside of the starting zone. Instead of finding everything at Sentinel Hill, you'll probably end up taking a short griffin ride back to Stormwind every few levels to visit your class trainer or work on your professions. In turn, this also highlights the importance of keeping track of your Hearthstone to quickly move between these locations and others as needed. By happenstance, you may also visit Cathedral Square around this time and meet Boros Alexton, architect of the city, who asks you to relive his humble beginnings in Westfall and collect his childhood compass from the Alexton farmstead. Another example of someone who left this rural land but still holds on to pieces of it. As you continue to quest and level, you begin to circle back to the deeper lore of the Defias Brotherhood and their intentions. At level 14, Stoutmantle...
I think the Defias Brotherhood quest, Defias Brotherhood for the whole like arc, right, is very good because it's not... It's perfect for a low-level player because you're introducing a very believable story and a very low-level story. I don't mean that as far as storytelling. I mean it as far as like introducing the world and the forces in the world. There's nothing supernatural about the Defias Brotherhood. You can imagine this in a TV show about the Wild West or something like that, right? Which is perfect because you're accessing information and you slowly ramp up. Like, okay, the world has mages and stuff. You're using magic. There are some mobs that are obviously not humans, like kobolds and stuff like that. But the storyline itself sets up a arc that's believable and kind of like gently puts you into this fantasy world. And I think that's why this quest line is so brilliant and so well done.
asks you to visit the town of Lakeshire in the Redridge Mountains. This is the first breadcrumb quest that introduces the third of 4 zones on our docket, and is really the first objective to introduce multi-zone questing into the main story. We'll come back to Redridge in due time, but at this point in your journey, you may have just stopped by Lakeshire to meet with your contact Wiley before flying.
This is a well-made human settlement. Lakeshire is really cool. I love the flagpole with like the icons on it, like I think one for Lakeshire, one for Stormwind or something like that. Very believable, very European, and it very feudal, like city-state type of thing. Redridge is a very cool zone because it's not that complicated. It's just the lake, and then there's stuff around the lake, right? But you have the elite zone, you have the orcs, you have the gnolls, and you have it's just a well-made, well-designed zone with a central hub that's the lake, and then a settlement right next to it. Very simple, but done very well, and it's kind of a mix between Westfall and Elwynn as far as color palettes are concerned, but it's unique enough to stand on its own. Very, very well designed.
Back to Sentinel Hill. Shortly after, the plans of the Defias are truly exposed by the intel of Master Shaw in Stormwind, who explains to you the Stonemasons Guild, feeling betrayed by the House of Nobles' refusal to pay up after the reconstruction of Stormwind, rebelled against the kingdom. Many of the craftsmen reforming under the bandanas of the Defias Brotherhood, led by none other than Edwin Van Cleef, EVC. With more of the puzzle pieces falling into place, Stoutmantle has you intercept a Defias messenger to gather more.
Oh my god, what a pain in the ass this was. Finding this guy, man. God, I've spent so much time trying to find this guy. Especially in hardcore, like you're just trying to find this dude and you're just like, oh my god, I just gotta get this quest done. Because you want to get all the quests, because you can only do VC once, you know? Deadmines once. But, you know, I think it's perfect. Like, it's imperfectly perfect. It's something that should not be removed from the game. I think it forces interaction, sometimes bad interaction, too. You're like, has anyone seen the Defias Messenger? You'll say, yeah, at your mom's house or something like that, right? But it's funny. And that's the kind of interactions that WoW kind of, like, helps facilitate. But you might get help, right? You might get someone who wants to form a group with you and do it, stuff like that. So this is another great way, and a subtle way, to force human interaction.
More evidence, then escort the turncoat Defias trader to the secret location of the Defias hideout, underneath a barn in the town of Moonbrook. This revelation is really cool because it's one of the most well-hidden...
First time I ever went to Deadmines, I didn't realize what we were... Like, it didn't look like a dungeon to me. I was just like, where are we going? We're going to this farmhouse? And then, I don't know, just go down, and there's this huge complex mine system underneath. It was super interesting to me. I just was blown away the first time I did Deadmines, because I was a Horde player, right? So I didn't do Deadmines right away. So it was very interesting.
Entrances to a dungeon, and without any outside help, it's really only possible to find this place by questing. The Deadmines are no solo endeavor, and whether by reading the quest log or entering the mines on your own, you'll quickly realize it is a group effort to take down Van Cleef and his minions. As you progress through the dungeon, the tunnels and rooms give you little hints of what's to come. The Mast Room, the Goblin Foundry. If you are paying attention, the reveal at Iron...
This isn't one of my favorite dungeons, but it's very, very well designed. As far as boss design, mechanically, you can pretty much have any group in there. There's not really a huge need to have certain classes. Mage, of course, is always helpful, but it's just a well-designed starter dungeon. It's also very interesting. It's very different from the Horde experience, right? Because the Horde have 2 dungeons you could do it like high teens, low 20s. You have the Wailing Caverns and you have Ragefire Chasm. Now, of course, the Alliance can do Wailing Caverns, but they don't have a low-level dungeon. Which is really interesting because you think the Alliance would, because most new players are going to be playing, or most players that don't have really MMO experience are probably going to be playing the Horde Alliance in 2004. I just think it's very interesting why the devs decided to do RFC for Horde, but nothing similar for the Alliance. I mean, technically you could say the Deadmines is that thing, but you'd think maybe the Stockades would have been a lower level dungeon for Alliance, but it wasn't.
Clad Cove may be less surprising, but no less awesome. A giant juggernaut vessel from the time of
Huge iconic scene right here.
the Second War is being reconstructed here in a dim grotto. Van Cleef's final plan for an assault on Stormwind. The pirate theme is in full swing here, which ties back to the coast.
Also, Van Cleef is a difficult boss for new players, and the first dungeon that a player will do, because Van Cleef is a two-phase fight, right? It starts off with two mobs, that you can either tank or kill, and then at 50% health or whatever it is, he spawns two more, and it doesn't matter if the first two are dead or not. Okay. Today's standards, of course, that seems like a joke. How could that be hard? But it is tricky, and even in hardcore, you see a lot of groups die to this. So it's a very interesting choice to have this in a lower level dungeon, to have a mechanic like that.
Coastal theme of Westfall in general, with shipwrecks and even treasure to be found along the coast. The massive doors at the exit to the cove are also visible in the outer game world in the very south of Westfall. An awesome continuity detail that many players...
Let me reverse this back.
The massive doors at the exit to the cove are also visible in the outer game world in the very south of Westfall. That's awesome continuity detail that many players probably miss out on.
I missed it on that. I've been playing this game since 2005.
Van Cleef and his personal guard put up an impressive defense, but the ringleader eventually falls, crippling the Defias effort. In my opinion, the Deadmines are the perfect start to a player's dungeon experience. It's not too long or too short, it has great connections to the story and enemies of the zone it's in, and it's one of the few...
RFC seems disjointed. Like, you don't know why the hell you're going in there, really, unless you're reading the quest text. But this one, you can tell, like, you've been fighting the same mobs for a long time. You've been fighting the guys with the masks for a long time, the Defias masks. You're like, okay, I'm fighting the same monsters. This guy's definitely the head of those guys. It's very clear, right? Very clear that what you're doing, even if you're not reading quest text.
Instances in the game to have a back exit portal, in this case one that leads out to the sunlit Dagger Hills. Returning to Sentinel Hill victorious, you're able to acquire some nice rewards, and potentially approach level 20 in the process. A beautiful culmination to the zone, and so far, 20 levels of story related to the Defias gang and their allies. But this is far from the end of the story. On Van Cleef's body, you can recover an unsent letter addressed to none other than Barros Alexton, the architect, who was once a fellow stonemason like Van Cleef. He has this to say about it. Edwin, I see the years haven't changed you a bit. An idealist as ever, and a romantic. He doesn't care who he hurts. Revenge has consumed him. But then, I'm not sure I can blame him. There are numerous videos online about why Van Cleef is a great villain, and this quote really captures the essence of it. After being cheated and scammed by the Stormwind nobles, the stonemasons did have cause to push back. They just went about this cause in violent and bloody ways. When considering Westfall and Elwynn side by side, it's hard to pick which is superior, but Westfall is certainly a great sophomore zone in its own right, ramping up the quests and story while giving players more freedom with their timeline and introducing them to flight paths and dungeons.
Yeah, exactly. I don't look at it as you should compare the two. It's part of an arc that they're trying to create, and the arc is definitely, this is the second part of that journey. You can say Redridge is kind of like, this is like 2A and Redridge is 2B, and then Duskwood is like 3. But it's a very well-designed journey where, again, like he said, you get to incorporate a bunch of different game mechanics, group content, flying, Hearthstone management, training, inventory management. Like going to the bank is what I mean. Like you're first probably thinking, oh, I got to put something to the bank now. I need to maybe use the auction house now. I need to get more bags. Like all these things it's starting to ramp up all the different things you can do in the game.
We'll return to the story of the Defias and Van Cleef's revenge at the end of the video, but for now, let's return to a different aspect of the story, Redridge. Those mysterious mountains to the east that bring the conflict in the kingdom to a whole new level. Depending on your preferences, you may have visited Redridge multiple times before bringing down Van Cleef, but I felt like saving the zone in its entirety for one continuous section. Starting around level 15, players might start supplementing their quests in Westfall by visiting the quiet town of Lakeshire, or at least somewhat quiet. See, Redridge doesn't have a Defias problem.
This is a great outdoor elite area, man. So cool. Outdoor elite dungeons were so amazing. And I just... Ah, man, so many good experiences here. Especially with Defcamp when we were doing that. Super Plate Brothers. Like, what a great... Like, Super Plate Brothers is basically the story of these 4 zones. Like, we basically only went up to that point. We didn't really get much into Duskwood at all, but we did a little bit. But it's just like, this is the story, right? He's talking about is what we did in Super Plate Brothers, which is like, it just brings back a lot of memories.
But it does have plenty of others. Blackrock orcs from the north have invaded the zone, ravaging Stonewatch Keep, once a great bastion of Stormwind's defense. Gnolls are also seen in greater numbers here, the howling in the hills keeping the residents on edge. And if that wasn't enough to contend with, a dark wizard has taken refuge in the Tower of Ilgalar, experimenting with evil magic. Though none of these foes now attack Lakeshire directly, it seems they are just biding their time on the fringe, waiting for the moment to strike. Compared to the previous 2 zones, Redridge is the turning point from internal, relatively run-of-the-mill threats to external forces seeking harm against Stormwind. Blackrock Mountain itself was one of the key locations in the Second War, and the orcs that dwell there present a very real and ongoing threat.
Another amazing, like, you know, I guess in 2004 render distances were probably not able to see this maybe, but I don't actually remember because I didn't play Alliance. But the fact that you can see Blackrock Mountain from these zones in the distance, like obscured by mist and clouds, it's just so fucking good, man. It's such good game design. You have this thing, you don't even know that you're going to be there one day. But you know it's there. You see this crazy mountain. You're like, I wonder what's over there, you know? And maybe some people went up that North Road and tried to go up in is it the Blasted? No, not the Blasted Land. What am I saying? You know what I'm trying to say, where the Black Dragons are. Searing Gorge. So it's just like, yeah, it's just a well-designed zone. Again, the central hub of the lake is so great because even if you don't know where you're going, if you keep the lake to your one side, you know where you are. You can always get back to where you are. It's just a well-designed zone.
At least in certain areas of the map. Even the wildlife seems more invasive, with black dragon whelps spitting...
Yeah, the first time you ever see a black dragon. Little black dragon whelps is in this zone.
Fire at passerby, and large spiders wreaking havoc at Althor's Mill. If Westfall was the
What was that?
And large spiders wreaking havoc at...
Random door sound. Oh, okay. I was like, what?
Althor's Mill. If Westfall was the sequel to Elwynn, Redridge is its ironic antithesis. A zone with peaceful music, pristine waterfalls, and the Great Lake Everstill, but in reality is teeming with deadly factions just waiting around the corner.
Man, how many people died up here?
Sometimes literally. Despite this change in tone,
especially with the net mechanic, right? This is the first time I think there's a net mechanic for Alliance. I could be wrong about that. I'm pretty sure there's nobody in Westfall that does that. The net mechanic is you're like, wait, I can't move. It's just a crazy mechanic. It's just great.
There are still familiar, almost wholesome moments in the mix. Bringing a guard his lunch, rescuing a child's lost necklace, and
Great
collecting
quest.
a toolbox from the bottom of the lake. Just to mind the local thresher. There are 2 key things that stand out to me as especially important here, and they are enemy groupings and multi-zone questing. Apart from the necessity of a group for the climactic Stonewatch Keep and Tower of Ilgalar, both of which are filled with elites, many of the standard areas require aid as well. Hunting down Yowler, pack leader of the Redridge Gnolls, brings you to a camp where the target is virtually surrounded by adds, requiring strategy, skill, or maybe a bit of patience to prevail and bring in his paw for a reward.
Not an easy pull by
Valley
yourself.
is a similar story, with many packs of Gnolls roaming around, including some stealthed ones. Stonewatch is also likely the
And then there's like the lieutenant over there, Lieutenant Fangor or whatever his name is, right? He's hard to kill sometimes.
first or maybe second time players have grouped up for elite content outside of a dungeon. setting up the precedent for so-called micro-dungeons scattered across the world.
Yeah.
In terms of multi-zone questing, Redridge is really where the wide-ranging story beats start to hit. Like Westfall, Lakeshire has mysteriously stopped receiving troops, and Magistrate Solomon is growing desperate, sending you to the capital, Sentinel Hill, and the hamlet of Darkshire for aid, unfortunately receiving none. On a lighter note, the barkeep needs to stock up on drinks, and requests a couple specific items from
this
around
makes you
the
go to
neighboring
all. Oh
zones.
yeah, this is a great quest. It seems very like annoying from a player that's been playing the game for a long time, right? But this forces you to go to Duskwood, right, and go to night watch, or the town, and it, you create that like 4-sided flight path. Now you have all the flight paths now, which is a great way of incorporating that. These quests, of course, seem annoying to veteran players, but they're really, really important quests, and they're really well made because it shows you the vastness of the world while causing you to do exploration and find new settlements and new flight paths, and now you can see like the shape of the area that you're in, which is really cool.
Even something as simple as a Shadowhide Null Pendant found in Gallardale Valley can have you retracing your steps in meaningful ways, sending you to the Mystic Tower of
That's
Azora
right.
back in Elwynn to plan against the Dark Sorcerer Morganth. These types of quests are so important because they're the glue that sticks these 4 zones together, and are at least the first strong examples in your journey that extend throughout the life cycle of the zone. There are also inverse examples as well. Take a look at the Rethban Ore quest that begins in Cathedral Square,
Yeah.
sending you first to revisit the nostalgic Northshire Abbey
That's right.
before pointing you back to Redridge, where you can discover a hidden cave in the Knoll Canyon.
Again, I shit on these quests because of the step-and-fest nature of them, but put yourself in the mind of a new player. That's why these quests were designed, right? So when you're doing your 100th playthrough, you're like, fuck, man, I have to go back to the Abbey, then I have to... But, again, these were designed for new players. All these quests. And these zones, more than any, are designed for new players, in my opinion.
Canyons you might never have found otherwise. The zone is both a destination and a jumping off point for a lot of different quests, but it's also unique in that it's one of the few examples of what I call an anti-quest. At the entrance to the Lakeshire Inn, a notice board simply says this: Missing, Corporal Keishan. Last seen during the bloody battle at Stonewatch Keep, Corporal Keishan was reported to have been dragged away by Blackrock Works. It is believed that Corporal Keishan is being held as a prisoner of war at the Blackrock encampment north of Lakeshire,
this quest is dangerous
just
and
west of the
hardcore.
pass leading to the Burning Steps. In most situations, this would start a quest to find the missing soldier, but here, it's just an object, a detail for you to look at or not to look at on your journey.
Yep.
At Render's Rock, the location referenced in the notice, there isn't an explicit need to venture far into the back of the cave, and if you hadn't paid attention to the notice, you might have missed out on a great escape. In the depths of the cave, bruised and battered, is Corporal Keishan. Escorting him to safety...
That's a good point. You forget these things as you know about these quests and that they exist, right? So to a new player, this is a complete, because now all you know is that there's yellow exclamation points above quest givers' heads, right? That's how you know a quest is there. These bulletin board type quests do not have that. So, and it doesn't explicitly tell you to go there, right? So it's a very interesting. It's not like go this way up to the thing. You have to figure out where this place is. It's just a really cool addition to the game.
No small feat for...
And it's difficult. And you don't know it's difficult. So your first time going through, you're probably not going to bring a partner with you. And then you go in there and get your ass handed to you. And then you're like, shit, I need someone to help me with this. And you start talking to people, right? You start talking to other players. Well designed.
For a solo player, a short interaction plays out as the soldier returns to serve his kingdom. While the reward for the quest isn't great, it might just be enough to know this little anti-quest was placed here for a reason, and that some players might have been observant enough to follow the clues and find this missing soldier. Redridge as a zone is both the familiar and the unfamiliar. A new frontier of quests, enemies, and cool places that I think a lot of Alliance players really enjoy, myself included. As you progress past level 20 and closer to 25, your adventures here will likely draw to a close. After laying siege with your allies to Stonewatch and the Tower of Ilgalar, the Orc and Gnoll forces are left fairly decimated, but all the while, the looming figure of Blackrock...
Yeah, this is a creepy place, right? Because you're like, what is beyond that gate? Do I go beyond that gate? Do I not? And most players, what I don't know. What did you guys do playing Alliance? Did you go through and get your ass handed to you, or did you just run away?
Mountain in the distance is a reminder that at least one threat is not over, and the menacing path to the Burning Steps may just have to be traversed another day.
Burning Steps, not
At this point, nearly all of your remaining objectives will point south, into the final of our 4 zones, the Forsaken Territory of Duskwood. There's a lot to unpack here, and this zone really rounds out our quartet with some incredible design choices that I believe are brilliant and, frankly, unparalleled.
Absolutely.
Duskwood is likely the most corrupted land you have visited up to this point.
Oh yeah, absolutely, right? As a human player, you or dwarf, right? You take the Deep Run tram. You which is another beautiful thing. Deep Run tram's awesome. But so you have this zone which is so starkly different from the 3 zones you've already been in. You can say that Westfall is a little bit rough and tumble, and Redridge has some really dangerous mobs, but this is now you're like, okay, I'm in a completely different experience here. This place is dark. This place is not welcoming. The music is scary. There's spiders, there's wolves, there's zombies, skeletons. This is a complete departure from the almost home feeling that Elwynn gives. Again, but you could see, because of the trees, that it looked like Elwynn at one point. So you already get an idea of okay, this is a corrupted version of Elwynn Forest, right? That's what the player thinks when they go into the zone.
A decrepit place that serves as a grim reflection of Elwynn Forest.
There you go.
The trees gnarled and filled with spider webs.
Great
untended
shot.
Graves teeming with the living dead. This area was once known as Brightwood, though the sun hardly shines now, and the grand hamlet of yore is now known as Darkshire, the last holdout against the coming darkness. Walking into this zone from either Westfall or Redridge, you can immediately tell this is going to be a different type of experience, one of evil things lurking about, and a haunting music track that perfectly fits the zone. There are many quests found in Darkshire, and the stories here build on the previous chapters, but with a darker twist. The Night Watch patrols the main roads in these lands, but without reinforcement from Stormwind, many of the orchards and farms here have been overrun with darkness, and the cemeteries, once proud monuments to those who fell in the Great Wars, are now twisted and desecrated.
Yeah, the graveyards are such a great addition to the zone. Of course, Tears Fall has this feeling too, but it's not as foreboding because Tears Fall is a starting zone. So you don't get the foreboding nature of Duskwood in Tears Fall, in my opinion. Tears Fall, there's a bunch of living mobs, right? There's a bunch of scarlet humans there. It's not as corrupted as Duskwood is, in my opinion. And Duskwood has a history attached to it that is palpable. Well, Tears Fall, you see Undercity, and you're like, okay, that had to have been something at some point. But outside of Tears Fall, outside of Undercity, you don't really have a lot of structures that really say, oh, this used to be this or this used to be that. So I think Duskwood does a really good job of presenting the history of the land using the structures that are there.
One thing that takes center stage in Duskwood is, fittingly, the villains, and most of the major quest lines here lead you to resolving one of the 3 major threats. I want to talk about each of these, and they're in no particular order since you'll probably be working on all of them around the same time. The most infamous of these is probably the Legend of Stalvin, a cross-zone mystery that has you revisiting previous zones to piece together a murder perpetrated by the psychotic Stalvin Mistmantle. Going back to Moonbrook, to Goldshire, to the Eastvale logging camp and more really builds on these layers of history present throughout the game, and having the Curse of Stalvin debuff as a feature gives it an added uniqueness. The story ends by tracking down Stalvin at his manor in northern Duskwood, surrounded by undead, and he himself has deteriorated into a husk. Doling out justice on him ends the story and prevents further harm to the already struggling community. Also, having the Warlock quest item that is collected here be named the Tear of Taloa is an excellent tie back to the lore. Stalvin's story is great, but it doesn't have too much of an effect on Duskwood itself, and is instead just a really cool standalone story that fits really well with the spooky atmosphere.
It really is.
Sven's revenge, however, is much more innately tied to the issues in this zone. Taking a supply shipment out to the Darkened Bank, you meet Sven Jorgen, a farmer turned fighter whose family was slain by the Dark Riders, allies of the necromancer Morbent Fell. Fell is the reason for the large undead presence in this zone, and has completely taken over the Ravenhill Cemetery in the western part of Duskwood. While this might first appear as just another elite boss at the end of a zone, Fell is different, and far more powerful. To break the enchanted wards surrounding him, Sven helps you venture briefly to the north and the Dwarven wetlands to recover some blessed Lightforge iron to craft.
Right, so this is, of course, obviously a very deliberate way of getting you to go to a different whole area, right? So now, a lot of players probably had no reason, maybe paladins, some people may have taken the deep run tram. There are quests that make you go there for sure. But a lot of players are probably like, I kind of want to stick in this area. So this one is another forced way of showing you there are other races, other starting zones in your faction, right? Huge areas of the game that you haven't even experienced yet.
Craft a holy torch. While this might seem antithetical to my original point, that the 4 original zones are a great adventure on their own, I think giving players a small detour to introduce them to the other regions and races of the Alliance is helpful from a gameplay perspective, a teaser of where players can visit once completing the human lands. Returning to Duskwood with the Holy Artifact, Fell is no longer invulnerable, but still requires a group to bring down and
another great shot, by the way,
end his tyranny. This is a great combination of both solo and collaborative efforts, as you won't be successful in defeating this villain without one or the other. This brings us to our third main antagonist, the Embalmer, or as we first know him, Abercrombie the Hermit.
Oh man,
in the beginning, he seems to just be a harmless old man, and we bring him some supplies from town out to his shack on the other side of Ravenhill. After doing some errands for him, however, it starts to become clear that something is off about his requests.
You warm an old man's heart with your with your kindness. Thank the neck. Well, thank you. You have more than earned your reward.
The environment here is also barely habitable. Ghouls patrol nearby, the pile of disturbed earth behind the shack is unsettling, not to mention the large, sinister crate placed nearby. Near the climax of this quest chain, Abercrombie has you take...
Man, I love the paintings in the game, right? That's obviously Thousand Needles. It's just a super cool little thing. Because you may look at this as a new player and look at that painting and be like, oh, that's a really cool, interesting looking thing. Then you go to Thousand Needles at some point and you're like, oh shit, I saw this in a painting. Just like little things like this, dude, are just huge indicators of the care that went into the game and also lessons to make future games. It's all these little things that add up.
Take a note to the Mayor of Darkshire, where it's revealed your efforts weren't innocent tasks, but actually steps in creating a horrific abomination, Stitches, who spawns at the cemetery and begins lurching toward town with a vengeance. If you stick around long enough, you'll actually be able to witness the battle in the town square, with the Night Watch and everyday players rallying to take down the monster. The final step is to dig up...
Yeah, it's such a cool addition. Having a big bad elite walk into the thing on a patrol. Obviously, of course, the side effect of that is you run into them as a solo player, which is scary as shit, and have ended many hardcore runs. But yeah, what a great little mechanic.
The hermits reanimate.
Because it shows you the world's dangerous and that like you are just a part of that world, and that the guards are part of that world too, even though they're NPCs. So it just brings you into the story. It brings you into the world.
Wife Eliza behind the shack and claim the embalmer's heart, which breaks his power forever. Redridge might have had the first anti-quest, but Duskwood has one of the most memorable first anti-quest givers, a villain in disguise whose tasks actually have a real consequence if you follow through with his scheme. I won't go into detail on all the supporting quests and characters, but anybody who's played through this region knows it's special. While you're handling all these major stories, you might also wander down into the Dawning Wood Catacombs,
this is such a cool little area.
A crypt with a secret tunnel,
and it's connected
all the way
to another
the
one.
other side of the cemetery, where Morbant Fell's secret lab can be found.
Such a
you
cool
can
little
approach
area.
this underground complex from either end, and finding the earthen passage connecting the two halves is a really neat
First time I ever discovered this, I was blown away. Absolutely blown away. And it was later. It wasn't until like private servers or classic, I can't remember which, that I experienced this. So years after release.
discovery. Despite being an undead-infested forest, Duskwood is also surprisingly diverse in its enemy encounters, with beasts, grave robbers, ogres, and even the Defias making an appearance. But I think the standout are the Worgen, WoW's version of werewolves. One of the most interesting design choices to me is that Duskwood never fully reveals the origin behind these creatures, and the Night Watch is only interested in stemming the tide of the beasts that seem to just materialize in the woods. It's only through the efforts of Night Elf adventurers visiting Duskwood from Ashenvale who help reveal the full story. The lost Scythe of Elwynn is behind the Worgen threat. I made a whole separate video on that adventure, but in relation to Duskwood as a
cool.
zone,
I don't think I've ever done
it's
that
quite
quest line.
fascinating and frankly fitting that another race with more experience and magical artifacts is able to unravel the true history here, bringing their evidence and clues with them to investigate a world-spanning mystery. As a human, just starting out in these lands, there's virtually no chance of you discovering the truth on your first playthrough. But that's what makes trying out other characters and storylines so fulfilling.
Absolutely.
The one other important tale I'll mention is something of a hidden quest, a footnote on Brightwood's history that helps round out the zone rather nicely. On the approach to level 30 and perhaps beyond, you might find a weathered grave on the outskirts of Ravenhill Cemetery, which reads the name Morgan Lattimore. After doing some research in the Darkshire Town Hall, it is revealed that Morgan was once a proud knight of Stormwind, who lost his mind and body to violence after his family...
Man, Duskwood is a very dangerous place, especially for hardcore players. There are so many mobs that can just destroy you, right? You have Stitches, you have Morladim, you have the guy they were just talking about, but you have to go in a house for that one. But the Abercrombie quest, like Eliza, can fuck you up. Like, there's so many mobs that can just destroy your ass in Duskwood. It's a very dangerous place for new players, and it's significant ramp up from Elwynn and Westfall, and in a lot of ways Redridge. Although Redridge has a lot of danger as well. We went over what those were: the outdoor lady area, the orcs, stuff like that. But it's a great difficulty slope, right? I think Blizz did a great job with these zones and increasing difficulty with each zone.
Passed away, eventually being risen by the dark powers of Duskwood to continue his indiscriminate rampage. This is where the undead, known as Morladim, who wanders Ravenhill, comes to the forefront of your quest. After dodging this elite raider for a good while in your adventures, it is finally time to gather your friends and put him to rest. Doing so unlocks a bittersweet ending, where you discover that one of Morgan's children actually survived and is now a member of the Night Watch, and it also involves getting a pretty sweet sword after visiting the weathered grave one last time. The quests in Duskwood flow so nicely together, and even though much of your travel will be spent going between Darkshire and the major locations like Ravenhill, there's almost always multiple things happening in either direction to make it worthwhile. The environment does exactly what it wants to achieve and more, and really conveys the sense of loss and tragedy through, as we've seen, numerous different quests and environmental factors. I also really enjoy how Duskwood parallels the threat of the Scourge in Lordaeron without being an exact copy.
It isn't an exact copy, that's true.
Corruption from Deadwind Pass and the whims of the Necromancer are just as compelling as the Undead Plague. Darkshire is made safer by your efforts, and you should be feeling pretty good rolling into level 30.
Yeah, but this time you actually feel like you're making strides, and it's crazy because at level 1 you were killing kobolds in a mine and some thieves in an orchard, and now you're like destroying like high-ranking scourge agents and big bads, if you will, at level 30, right? But you're still not like a champion of the Alliance yet. You're just working your way up the ranks. Such a well-designed game and a well-designed questing experience and level creep, like level progression and story progression. Just a Classic WoW is a gem. It just is. And you don't get the same feeling of this in the Burning Crusade or any other expansion because you're already at a level where you're killing cosmic demons and stuff like that. This game is just something really, really special. And I think we all agree to that.
Virtually the halfway point to max level. However, in my opinion, Duskwood does not mean the end, lore-wise, of this human experience. And we have one more critical chapter to discuss before I wrap up today's video. So, let's recap. Elwynn, Westfall, Redridge, and Duskwood. 4 deeply connected zones that tell detailed, complex stories on their own, and in some cases together. With the Blackrock Orcs defeated, the Necromancer disposed of, and the Defias gang in shambles, now's the time for new adventure.
Man, I would love to have a Blackrock Orc skin. Like, skin color for orcs would be amazing.
Right? Well, almost. Let's circle back to one crucial plot point that connects all 4 zones, their abandonment by Stormwind. These zones have all suffered from a lack of troop support, and it seems the military decisions by the royalty and nobility are not in the best interests of the people. There are more flagrant examples of corruption that we can find as well. Guard Burton in Lakeshire has the following to say. Targor the Dread served under Gathilzog as Supreme Executioner. His methods were ruthless, even by filthy orc standards. Now he's being held in the Stormwind Stockade, sentenced to die. Yet something is amiss.
He sends you to kill him.
One of the bureaucratic nobles put a hold on his execution. I am sure foul play is in the works. A suspiciously similar quest can be found in Darkshire. As if the neglect for the residents of Duskwood was not bad enough, now the House of Nobles spits in the eye of the Darkshire Council with their decision to imprison Dexter and Ward in Stormwind rather than behead the villain as per Lord Ebenlock's sentence. Both of these examples lead to the Stormwind Stockade, and it seems there is one other who also has an interest here. Baros Alexton isn't content with just the Deadmines being cleared out, and he wants you to visit the stockade to find out more. Basil Thread, Van Cleef's right-hand man, has been imprisoned here for some time, and might know more about any residual schemes still underway. Talking with Thread is more...
So this is like a morally gray thing that they have you doing while is to execute these prisoners, right? And most of us just like, oh yeah, go in and get the loot. Who gives a fuck about the story, right? But this is a really interesting thing where it makes you do something that's technically morally gray and debatable whether it's the right thing to do or not.
More difficult than you might have expected, however, as the Defias prisoners within are rioting, and the guards on the outside are barely holding them back. With this unforeseen turn of events, the Warden has effectively voided any criminal protections, inviting you and your allies to clear out the whole dungeon to protect the city. After completing the dungeon, the Warden rewards you with some information about Thread. Apparently, he received visits from a curious man, who we later learn is Marzone the Silent Blade, an assassin contracted by none other than Lord Gregor Leskovar, a shady member of the House of Nobles. This culminates in an assassination, where, after waiting for the guards to leave, you're able to interrupt a meeting between the two and dispatch them both, seemingly ending the corruption and preventing any chance for Van Cleef's revenge against Stormwind to come to fruition. The final quest, titled An Audience with the King, sends you to the Royal Keep to report on your findings. Reaching the throne room, you discover it is instead Lady Katrana Prester, another noble who you report to.
Who is that?
You are to be commended for the service you have done for Stormwind. Take this as a token of the king's appreciation. I am only sorry he cannot present it to you himself, but he is away on a diplomatic mission and shall not return for some time. For veteran players of the game, this moment is both really satisfying, but also really nerve-wracking, as despite this friendly reception that new players might pick up on, the corruption in Stormwind actually goes much deeper than just a few bandits and a single noble. But that's a story for another time. As somebody who started their WoW journey in Wrath of the Lich King many years.
But the fact that she is who she is, and I won't ruin it for anyone who's new to the game, is just amazing that you're able to interact with that early in the game and that level, right? These quests are just so well designed.
Ago and only experienced vanilla very recently, I almost got chills reading this original version of the quest.
Wow, almost he just experienced vanilla recently, man. What I would give to be that person, man. You know, it's just what an amazing experience to have at that moment in his life. Just an amazing experience to go back to that and experience that for the first time. Be really cool.
Quest, which does a great job of setting up one of the major stories going forward, the missing diplomat.
Yep.
However, this here is more or less a clear-cut ending to the first half of the game for human players. 4
Agreed.
incredible zones down, and many more to be discovered. Perhaps you'll next lend your aid to the fallen kingdom of Strom in the north, venture into the dense jungles to the south, or head across the sea to see what awaits in the lands of Kalimdor. No matter how many human playthroughs of classic WoW I do, this level 1 to 30 journey always just feels special. And while everybody has their own different feelings and interpretations of it, I think I can confidently say this is some of the best work Blizzard has ever done. 20 years
Agreed.
after its release,
It's very,
we're
very
still
well done.
feeding old Blanchy, running from stitches, talking to a lion statue, and doing so much more within these zones. And I hope I've conveyed to you all today why that's the case. Thank you all so much for watching. If you made it this far, I wish you all a great start to your summers. And make sure you tune into the outros going forward for a couple hidden secrets.
Ooh, hidden secrets.
Until next time, may the Force be with you.
Alright, is it supposed to be a hidden secret here, or am I losing my mind? Oh! TMCDQYZMFZQ. Must be some type of cipher. Let me know in the comments if you figured it out. Don't tell me. Just let me know if you did.
Anyway.
There's Asmongold. Guys, great video. Jedi Warlock, his channel will be linked in the description. Give him a like, give him a sub, watch his stuff. I'm going to definitely be watching a lot of his stuff from now on. I just kind of came across his channel yesterday. Thank you for watching the next Melderon Reacts. In the comments, there'll be a pinned comment by me that will say something like, "What will I watch next?" If you want me to watch a certain video, please link it in that as a reply to that comment, or just tell me the name of it, whatever you want to do. And like I said before in the previous video, gaming, the tier of hierarchy should probably go classic WoW, and then gaming in general, and then science, and then anything else below that. So I have no problem reacting to anything. I just want, this is a gaming channel, so I prioritize games. But what a great video. I agree with everything he said. Those 4 zones are iconic. The quests are iconic. The care that the developers put into those quest design is just amazing. It's a beautiful, beautiful introduction to a game. There's not anything I can think of that even compares to it in gaming. It's all the little things coming together, right? It's not... I think a lot of game devs try to put these huge systems in games, and they forget about all the little things that people love. Like the pictures of Thousand Needles, or, having to click on a statue, or, being forced to interact with players using a quest that's not direct. It's all these little things people love. So, have a great day, everyone. Thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Keep on, keep hiding and grinding.